Hello and welcome to Haggas History. Today we're me taking a look at the hit musical Hamilton and the historical inaccuracies that exist within the show.
We'll cover 10 total inaccuracies, as well as compare and contrast 3 original written documents to quotes from the show, and discuss why creator Lin-Manuel Miranda chose to include these inaccuracies in the musical.
Now let's get into it.
The first major inaccuracy in Hamilton is the representation of the Schuyler family. In the show, we only meet 3 of the Schuyler children, known in the musical as the Schuyler sisters. This commonly leads people to believe that there were only 3 Schuyler sisters, when, in reality, the Schuylers had 15 children, 8 of which survived to adulthood and 3 of which were brothers. This completely discredits Angelica's line in Satisfied, "My father has no son, so I'm the one who has to social climb for one." Additionally, while the two were close, there is no historical evidence to support the idea that Angelica was in love with Hamilton, as the musical suggests. In fact, she was already married when she met Hamilton for the first time.
The idea of there being a love triangle between Hamilton, Eliza, and Angelica, as presented in the show, is just false. However, it certainly creates tensions and adds to the overall entertainment value of the show.
The second major inaccuracy in the musical Hamilton is the friendship between Lawrence, Mulligan, Lafayette, and Hamilton. While the show presents Alexander Hamilton, John Lawrence, Hercules Mulligan, and Marquita Lafayette as all being close friends, there's no evidence to support that Mulligan ever met Lawrence or Lafayette. He was, however, a very good friend of Alexander Hamilton's. On the other hand, there is evidence to support that Lawrence, Lafayette, and Hamilton did all meet and were friends. This makes the scene in Aaron Burr, Sir, where Hamilton, Burr, Lawrence, Mulligan, and Lafayette meet for the first time, inaccurate. There's no evidence to support that the 5 of them were ever all together in the same room. Additional little fun fact about Aaron Burr, Hamilton was actually denied an education at Princeton and instead attended King's College. And no, unfortunately, he did not punch Bursar as stated in the song.
But hey, it rhymes.
The third major inaccuracy in Hamilton is Hamilton's position on slavery. Throughout the musical, Alexander Hamilton is portrayed as being opposed to slavery or even supporting abolitionist views. While there's much evidence to support that Hamilton was morally opposed to slavery, as a lawyer, he often helped his in-laws, the Schuylers, with their transactions of enslaved peoples. Additionally, there is some evidence to support that he even owned a couple slaves for house labor, as hinted in his writing and told by close relatives. However, this is not 100% confirmed. The show also features a diverse cast, which can further support the idea that Alexander Hamilton was opposed to slavery, but this was more likely a choice to promote inclusivity and display the diversity of America.
Now we're going to really quickly cover some smaller inaccuracies that exist within Hamilton, the musical.
The first minor inaccuracy in the show is Hamilton-Washington's relationship. First, in the musical, it appears they meet for the first time in New York City in 1776, when in actuality, they likely met in 1777 in Morristown, New Jersey. Also, the show portrays Hamilton as vital on the battlefield, at one point even having Washington beg Hamilton to return. However, Hamilton's role on the battlefield was largely exaggerated, and he was always asking Washington for a leadership position, which he received in 1781. The second minor inaccuracy in Hamilton is the Winter's Ball. In the show, the Winter's Ball of 1780 is set as the place where Alexander Hamilton and Elizabeth Schuyler first meet. In reality, records show the two first met 3 years prior in 1777 at her parents' house. However, the winter of 1780 was when the two began to become more romantically involved, and they would marry in December that same year. Also, Martha Washington did not name her feral tomcat after Alexander Hamilton, despite his saying it's true in the musical. The third minor inaccuracy in the show is the John Lawrence and Charles Lee duel. In the show, Alexander Hamilton was John Lawrence's second, and Aaron Burr was Charles Lee's second for the duel. In the real duel, Lee's second was actually Major Evan Edwards. Additionally, in the musical, it appears that the reason Hamilton left George Washington's staff is because he's fired after the duel, when in reality, Hamilton resigned because he wanted a field command and was denied. The fourth minor inaccuracy in Hamilton is the characterization of Thomas Jefferson. In the musical, Thomas Jefferson is portrayed as loud, boisterous, and very confrontational. However, many accounts say that Thomas Jefferson was a quiet, thoughtful person who approached political confrontations carefully. He and Hamilton often worked together, especially during Hamilton's first term as Secretary of the Treasury and Jefferson's first term as Secretary of the State. The fifth minor inaccuracy in the show is the Reynolds pamphlet. The show suggests that the affair between Maria Reynolds and Hamilton took place in New York City during the summer of 1791. However, Maria first visited Hamilton in Philadelphia. She is also portrayed as being in love with Hamilton, but it is also possible that she was helping her husband, James Reynolds, in blackmailing Hamilton for money. It is unknown whether these were her true intentions or if she really was in love with him. Additionally, in the show, Hamilton is confronted by Burr, Madison, and Jefferson. when it was actually Congressman Abraham Venable, Speaker Frederick Muhlenberg, and James Monroe who accused Hamilton of government fraud. The sixth minor inaccuracy in Hamilton is the Adams administration. The musical states that Adams fired Hamilton when really he resigned during Washington's administration 2 whole years before the Adams administration. Also, John Adams played an important part in Hamilton's political career, appointing him Inspector General in the U.S. Army, giving him a large platform and influence, but he never actually appears in the musical. The final minor inaccuracy in the musical is the election of 1800. In the show, it appears that Hamilton's endorsement of Jefferson and his outspokenness against Burr are what ultimately led to the Burr-Hamilton duel. In reality, it was Hamilton's undermining of Burr's campaign for New York governor in 1804 that would lead to the duel. Additionally, by 1800, Hamilton did not have as much political influence as he once did, and his endorsement most likely didn't sway the election one way or the other. This means his role in the election of 1800, as portrayed in the musical, was vastly exaggerated.
Now that we've covered all the inaccuracies in Hamilton, we're now going to be taking a closer look at some of the documents that are either mentioned or directly quoted in the musical.
The first document we're going to look at is Washington's farewell address. The song One Last Time gives the general idea of Washington's resignation without all the nitty-gritty details. Towards the end of the song, Hamilton begins to quote the address almost exactly word for word. Let's take a listen.
Though in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I am unconscious of intentional error, I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors.
The next document we're going to look at is the Reynolds pamphlet. The Reynolds pamphlet does a good job of summarizing the nearly 100-page document in a 2-minute song. Lin-Manuel Miranda even quotes a few key pieces from the pamphlet. Let's listen.
Charge against me is a connection with one James Reynolds for purposes of improper speculation. My real crime is an amorous connection with his wife for a considerable time with his knowing consent.
Fun fact, the Hamilton-Reynolds affair was the first major sex scandal in U.S. history.
The final document we're going to compare is the Farmer Refuted. The song Farmer Refuted covers the main idea of the document, which is that governments established without the approval of the people is a violation of their natural rights. The dynamic between Hamilton and Samuel Seabury throughout the song also displays the growing tensions between the colonies and Great Britain. However, there's nothing in the song directly quoted from the document The Farmer Refuted.
Now it's time that we answer the question of why these inaccuracies would be included in the show if they're, well, inaccurate. The best and most likely answer is simply for entertainment.
When creating stories based on real events, writers will often take creative liberties to increase the entertainment value of the show. Lin-Manuel Miranda likely chose to include these inaccuracies in order to create a more compelling, dynamic show, even if some of the details are exaggerated or inaccurate. When asked about the Schuyler family inaccuracy in an interview, he said he simply forgot, and that his brain probably wanted him to forget in order to make Hamilton and Angelica's relationship more intriguing.
Overall, the musical Hamilton is pretty accurate, even if some details were either left out or modified to better suit the production. That's all I have for now. I hope you learned a lot because I know I did. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe and have a great day.